Good morning.
Good morning.
Jill, nice to see you back with us.
Good to see you too, Karen.
Chase and Marie, early morning.
Hi.
We may have a sort of small group today. I heard from a number of people who really wanted to be here, who are generally here that weren't able to, so they're going to be eagerly awaiting the recording. But with the small group, we all have nowhere to hide. So this will hopefully be a generative and fruitful discussion with Zach. So do you all know Zach? Marie, were you on our call last year with Zach?
Yeah.
You know Zach and Chase and Jill. We might as well just do quick introductions as long as we're a small crew so far.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great. Let's do it.
This is like the Zach fan club. This is like,
Yeah.
woo, woo, we're in the house. We got him. This is good.
This is
So
great. Yeah, I'd love introductions, and I never get to do this. Like,
that's
never
funny.
get to do introductions, so this is great because there's
Uh,
there's usually just a lot of muted cameras. So, should we do it, Karen? Who should go first?
Yeah, Marie, why don't you go first? You could do.
Oh, yeah, of course. Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Marie. I'm up
Good
here
to
on
see you, Marie.
yeah, nice to see you too. I've been screaming from the mountaintop that your book is coming out. It's coming out. The I'm up here on Whidbey Island, just north of Seattle, and we have a tiny ray of sunshine, and it's actually hitting right here in the moment. So this is a rare occurrence for me. So
It
I'm really
actually is great.
here.
I'm like, what kind of lighting do you have? This is
I
great, but I
know.
guess I guess it's just the star.
It's yeah, exactly. Good to see you. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Chase.
Hi, I'm Chase Sterling. I just woke up, so I'm not
Yeah,
super.
me too. Don't worry. I have my coffee hidden underneath the desk. I'm like,
I know, I gotta try to make some. I live in Portland, Oregon, and my background's in organizational psychology. I've been working in workplace well-being for 25 years. And I'm so passionate about it that I started a nonprofit called Wellbeing Think Tank. Karen's actually speaking at our event later today. And
oh, awesome.
we provide free education on workplace well-being. So I consult for a living, and then the nonprofit's my passion project. Like I'm just so passionate about trying to make workplaces better.
Oh, that's fantastic. We have to connect.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think there's
absolutely.
room for some collab there with you two.
Yeah. Yeah.
I won't call on anybody that is not on their video because it looks like
That's the nonverbal signal.
yeah,
So
some of you
you're not
are
calling on me today?
yeah, well some of you maybe can't. It looks like Elena, you can't you
I
don't
can
have
jump in.
yeah, great.
We'll make it easy. Hi, everyone. I'm Jill. I'm Central Time, so I had a little bit of time to wake up, drop my son off at school. Home of the new Pope here in Chicago.
Ah,
I
yes,
wonder how long
congratulations.
I can ride the Pope references here, but we've got Portillo's and some other companies that are making sandwiches in honor of the Pope, and it's just like a whole thing here right now. So
Great.
I'm gonna ride it as long as I can. And I'm co-founder of an HR consulting firm called Simply Human, and my co-founder, I'm expecting to join us. She's out in Pacifica, so I know it's early for her as well. So she may be joining a little bit late. Her name's Desiree, and we both spent many decades in corporate HR. Those were our careers. Both have a background in psychology. Des is a clinical psychologist. We're both certified coaches, and we do lots of different HR consulting work, fractional work. We have an offering for startups specifically to help them get their HR foundation set, called HR Launchpad, that helps them get their tech stack and HR and everything in order because no founder wants to worry about HR. It's the last thing on their mind. They don't care. And we love it if they get set up correctly, so that you don't have to unravel after, that Series C and D. We also do some crisis management and support. We recently partnered with Bereave for grief and loss support.
Mm.
So we have a team of coaches who come in and support workplaces dealing with grief and loss, less one-on-one, but more kind of workforce support. So a couple different verticals there, but very happy to be with you and look forward to getting to know you, Zach.
Thanks. Good to meet you, Jill.
I can go next. Good morning, everyone. I'm Yuna Kim. I'm joining from New York. Currently, I serve as Director of Wellbeing and Culture at one of the youth mental health organization. We do a lot of studies about human flourishing, especially focused on Global South. And on the side of it, I'm also cultivate the care well-being culture, for the well employee, and also I will be a doctor candidate. Hopefully, I can pass the
Oh,
exam this
congratulations.
and then focusing on critical alignment between how employee and employer perceive their respective responsibility in workplace, because I believe the
Mm,
expectation really determine the like retentions and how we elaborate those and the taking into the insight that's important. So that's my
mm.
background. Nice to meet you all.
Good to meet you.
I switched on my camera to say hello. So I'm Jana
Hello.
from Bremen in Germany. So it's afternoon for me. So I'm
How was your day?
quite okay. So I
Good,
will be on
good.
vacation next week, and so I'm just like closing down everything, and so it's
Oh,
it's
that's nice.
yeah. So I work in a steel factory in the health department. I'm a psychologist by background, and my task is to create a healthy work environment. Can be
Cool.
everything from like healthy tools to leadership, like anything. So, and it's quite interesting to join here. So I join when I can because it's always very interesting to find out what people have already developed and which solutions already exist.
Beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I can go next. Sorry, I joined a little bit late. My name's Susan Peters. I'm the Associate Director of the Harvard Center for Work Health and Wellbeing. So I'm, I guess, representing academia here, while our research funding still continues at Harvard for now. I look after the worker wellbeing research that we do within the center. So I developed a framework called the Thriving from Work framework, which kind of sits underneath the Flourishing umbrella.
Mm,
What we do is really look at some of the research that kind of supports which factors influence workers thriving, so which are the most important factors, but
mm,
also thinking about how can we design jobs, what sort of conditions are important in the workplace, what sort of work environments are most important for workers thriving, not just at work, but so that they can take their thriving home to their communities, their families, and be able to be engaged and happy in their lives outside of work as well. So
mm.
nice to be, I always enjoy being a part of this group.
Yeah, it's great to meet you.
I would love to read Zach's bio, and then Zach, feel free to jump in with your own personal intro if you don't mind.
Of course, yeah. Do you want me to just do the intro? Or do you want to read my bio?
I'll read it. I like reading.
Okay, you can give some highlights and then I'll jump in.
Yeah, I like reading people's awesomeness. So Zach is a researcher, author, and leadership development facilitator specializing in purposeful leadership, mattering, meaningful work, and positive organizational psychology. He advises leaders in organizations worldwide on practices for building cultures that promote well-being, motivation, and performance. Some of his clients include the U.S. Army, USA Wrestling, JP Morgan Chase, Delta Airlines, Marriott International, and the National Park Service. He also serves as one of author Simon Sinek's Optimist instructors. He earned his PhD in organizational learning, performance, and change from Colorado State University, where he serves as a senior research and teaching fellow in the Department of Psychology Center for Meaning and Purpose, and as an instructor in the Organizational Learning, Performance, and Change program. His research on meaningful work has received awards from the Association for Talent Development, the Academy of Management, and the Academy of Human Resource Development. His previous book was The Invisible Leader, Transform Your Life, Work, and Organization with the Power of Authentic Purpose. He lives in Fort Collins, Colorado with his wife, 2 sons, and 2 adopted dogs. And his book, The Power of Mattering, How Leaders Can Create a Culture of Significance, was officially released this week.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome, Zach.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Karen. And excited to be with you all today. I love the intimate group that we have. I will add only one thing to that bio, and that is that I now have a pet snake because my 7-year-old has saved up his money for a snake. He's obsessed with reptiles, and so I am now a snake dad, officially, of a ball python named Striker.
is Striker?
Striker, yeah, very calm name too. That was a 7-year-old name. So I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad to talk about the importance of mattering with you all, because I truly believe, after looking at the data, that we are actually facing a mattering deficit, not a disengagement crisis or a loneliness epidemic. Uh, we are facing an epidemic of insignificance, and I'm excited to talk about that.
Well, it's relevant and timely, and this is Mental Health Awareness Month. Every month is Mental Health Awareness Month in my world, but I really think that the narrative of this is matching this disconnection, and even I'm thinking of mattering as like this is an antidote for burnout. Like
Mhm.
I think it's just at the intersection of so many things. So I did have the privilege of reading your book ahead of time, and it's fabulous. I don't want to hog the conversation, so I will open it up, of course. But a couple of things I loved, Zach, is you talk about it as a skill and a practice. And correct me if I misrepresent, but I love that idea because that shows we have agency in it, and it offers hope, and it offers a path forward in terms of this is a developable skill.
Mhm.
And like many interpersonal interventions, $0.
Yes. Can we do something right now? Can everybody think about when they most feel that they matter to someone else? What's happening? When you most feel that you matter to another person, what is going on? And maybe in the chat, just type like 2 or 3 words that describe what they are doing when you most feel that you matter. So when you most feel that you matter to someone else, um, let's talk at work. Most feel that you matter to someone else at work. What are they doing? Thanks, Karen. Present, attending without distraction, some deep attention. Good. Going out of their way to help me. Cared for, attended to, asked. I love that. Some people say invited. I was invited into something. Eye contact, listening, and I am buoyed. Yeah, you're lifted up. Someone lifts you up. Acknowledgement. Good. Checking in, both in good times and bad times. Feel needed and safe with somebody. Deep connections, validated. So as you think about this, right? None of these things exist in a program or a platform or an initiative. We've asked this question of thousands of people. This is where our research started. No one has ever mentioned us a perk, a platform, or what they get, any sort of large initiative. We have never gotten an answer that we've analyzed that has had anything to do with a big action. It all happens in small interactions. And one of the things that I think that we've gotten wrong about engagement, about workplace well-being is if you look at the last 10 years, say, let's just look at the Gallup engagement data. And engagement has relatively remained unchanged for 10 years. This is despite the engagement industry becoming a $1 billion industry. There are 100 validated engagement surveys right now that you could use. There are thousands of engagement coaches now on LinkedIn that are helping people increase their engagement. And yet nothing's moved the needle. We've spent billions on well-being programs, on DEI initiatives, and yet people are just as disengaged as they've always been in these self-report surveys. But there's some deeper things going on here that if you look at the underlying data, right, in that sample, just 40% of people, 4 out of 10 people said they felt someone at work cared for them as a person. Just 30% said that someone invested in and knew their unique potential. You look at work humans data, 30% of people feel invisible in work. The American Psychological Association finds that almost 60% of people have never had a boss that truly appreciates them. So what we're facing is not a programmatic issue, it's an interactional issue. People experience well-being, they experience significance in daily interactions. And this is where I think the solution lies. And going back to what Karen had mentioned, these are skills, the skills of seeing, the skills of hearing, the skills of paying deep attention, the skills of being attuned to the details, ebbs and flows of someone's life and checking in, noting those things down is a skill. The skill of showing someone how they're needed is a skill. When we think of these people who do these things for us, they're skills. There's a couple of things that have been happening. One is since the 60s, we've called these things soft. So that army psychologist in the 60s who was studying high performing teams, and he couldn't categorize the skills that actually contributed to high performance that weren't tactical or operational, things like listening, connecting people to something bigger. So he called them soft. I wish he did not do that. I don't even remember his name right off the top of my head. But when we see something as soft or simple, uh, we approach it with less rigor. Our brain says, I got it. We are susceptible to an overconfidence bias. So I think we have an overconfidence bias with regard to seeing, hearing, and valuing others. And then the second thing that's happening is that I don't even have my phone near me, but for the past 25 years, we've been able to get out of the social situations in which these skills are learned. So if Karen gives me some bad news, I can just send her a sad-faced emoji now and say, I'm sorry to hear that. I can put down my phone and I don't have to think about Karen until next week when I see her again. I don't have to sit with Karen and navigate the discomfort, demonstrate compassion, demonstrate understanding. If Marie gives me some good news, I can just give you a thumbs up emoji on Slack. Good job. See you in the next update meeting. I don't have to sit with Marie anymore and say, hey, I've noticed for the last 5 years that you've been deeply involved in this. You've persevered. I'm really proud of you. That's a skill. So what we have to understand is that a lot of people think this stuff is simple. It's common sense that we do this for one another. The skills to do this have atrophied over the last 25 years. We're not getting the social repetitions anymore that we used to get that develops these skills. And so I don't believe anybody wakes up and wants to be an uncaring leader. Nobody's like, hey, I'd like to prefer my people feel unseen today. I'd really like them to take a self-report survey and indicate they feel quote unquote invisible from an anonymous third-party software developer, right? No. Um, we have lost the skills to care, to see, hear, value one another in interactions. And the only way to get it back, I think, when we look at the data is interactional. And so I know that was a long answer, but you brought up skills. And yes, these are skills. These are hard skills. The skills to truly deeply see a human, hear a human, the skills to affirm a person, show someone they're needed. Those are the skills. And when you boil that down, what's the underlying concept? And you look at psychological research, you look at our basic instincts. It's not belonging, it's not inclusion, it's mattering. It's feeling that we're significant to the people around us. It's going back to the basics. That's my TED talk for today. I'm kidding.
That's amazing. Welcome, Eileen. Eileen's also calling in from Harvard.
Oh, great, great. So yes, so it is a skill that we can learn and that we can develop. So it's a good question, Karen.
Yeah, I've got to jump in on this passion for skills. So as Zach, you and I chatted earlier, and Karen, you know this, we're getting ready to launch a community that's focused on developing skills and doing it through social learning, et cetera. I have been on the road with lots of different investor groups, and they all jump right into the come on skills, interpersonal relationships, and soft skills. Really, that's what we're doing. And I'm like, yeah, if there was ever a time in our history that we needed to focus on this and actually elevate people's thinking about this and the power of it in transforming the workplace, it's now. So your book is very timely, Zach. I've been telling everyone that this is going to be a powerful way to start thinking about it. So I do want to kind of call attention to the comment about leadership and how leaders engage with people. And, Jen Marr talks a lot about how these folks don't get it right. And we've got lots of sad examples out there where it's been tough. But the data keeps coming back in that, even in the white paper we put out 2 years ago, we saw this massive chasm between how leaders think about the workplace, think about their role, think about what they're contributing. And they have this false sense that they're doing it well and that, we don't need to worry about this stuff. This, to your point, this isn't necessary to spend too much time. How do you start those conversations with some of these leaders where the data's coming in, the gap is massive between how a leader feels work is going compared to how the employee feels that it's going, and in particular, the gap between how well do you think your employer cares about your well-being is really challenging. How do you help start this conversation in your mind? What's a good first step, and maybe how to think about elevating the power of developing these skills?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think you're speaking to that overconfidence bias when it comes to calling something soft or simple. Or I've heard people say, oh, we just try to hire good people. Being a good person doesn't scale, right? Skills scale. Like you can't scale intuition or just doing the right thing. Um, and a lot of times what we've tried to do is we don't have the ecosystem that actually helps these leaders develop these skills, evaluate these skills, and then also get the social repetitions to use those skills. And we tend to leave it up to chance. A lot of like soft skills is training based. So you do a one-off training program and then the person goes out into their everyday work, and then there's never peer coaching work or follow-up work where people can then come in and talk about what they tried, what didn't work, and iterate, just like any other part of work that we're working on. Think about all the meetings we have in work, and most of our meetings together, especially as leaders, is focused on what we're doing together and not how we're being with people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of our time spent together are what I like to call update fests. We just transact information with one another. We should not be spending time as leaders with other leaders in exchanging information. That should be done via email. What can't be done via email is checking in on how people are doing, working through a conflict with somebody else, showing compassion to somebody who's struggling on a project. The best leadership teams that I work with don't spend their time on what they're doing with one another. They spend their time on how to be with one another. So I think one of the things we have to do is create these spaces, more spaces where leaders can work on these human skills. But to bring this out of common sense to common practice, people have to evaluate themselves on behaviors, not on feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of our engagement surveys out there, well-being surveys, they survey how people feel when they're taking a survey. They don't survey or measure tangible behaviors that are skills that can be learned. So for example, one of the things that we've done is with regard to cultivating mattering is we found that there are three major skill areas, practices for making sure people feel that they matter. We have to notice them, see and hear them. We have to affirm them, show them how their uniqueness makes a unique difference. And then we have to show them how they're needed, how they're irreplaceable and indispensable. One of the things that we started doing was having leaders self-assess on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 being the frequency. I didn't do this very much this week. 5 is I did it frequently this week. And they would be questions like, how frequently did you check in on a coworker's personal life this week? How frequently did you check in on someone's work project or work struggle this week specifically? How frequently did you name a unique gift that a coworker brought to the team this week? And what happens is that when you ask people to rate these things 1 to 5 from frequency of behavior, I've never gotten anybody that says 5. And usually there's this moment where people say, "Oh, I thought I was doing this, but when I brought it to conscious awareness, when I finally elevated it from common sense to objective awareness, I can say to myself, oh, I'm actually not noticing my people as much." And sometimes it's that objective awareness that goes a long way. And then what we've also done in organizations has had teams rate their leaders on those behaviors. And then we have them talk to one another. about the mismatch in those expectations. Or if it does match up, sometimes the team leader says, no, 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 you do affirm me in these ways.
Mhm.
And the leader never thought that they did that. Um, and so I think it really starts with measuring frequency of behavior that's tied to a skill that can be learned, because it gives people hope too. Because if someone scores lower on, for example, affirming someone, pointing out unique gifts, that is a skill. Like strength spotting is a skill you can learn.
It is.
And it's very hard for someone to say, I only do this a couple times a month. I don't do this enough. I want to get better at this, to be able to say, oh, you can learn how to do that. And there's probably someone in this room that can do that. So I think that that's where it starts. I actually got called in my first engagement in education. I got called in to work with teachers, and the superintendent said, Zach, I'm a little worried about this. They got this mattering stuff. Like, they're teachers. What are you going to say to them about mattering? They work with third graders every day. Um, and I said, just watch. And I had them take the assessment. And they very quickly realized, wow, like when my student is absent, the first thing I tell them is not, hey, I want to show you why we missed you yesterday. Your students weren't smiling. They weren't laughing as much because you weren't telling your jokes. And it wasn't the same without you, right? That's a skill to show someone they're needed. The first thing they were saying when they were absent was, hey, where were you?
Mm-hmm.
So it's those, and if someone said this in the chat, and I want to just bring it back here. It's those skills to create these micro moments. Like what happens to that student, for example, when they're absent and they come back into that classroom, whether they're missed or they're not missed, can be the difference of whether they feel that they matter or don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the same. And when we go to leaders, it's these small micro moments of learning these skills and assessing these behaviors and implementing them where the magic happens. So it's a great question. I think we have to bring this out of awareness to common practice and assess behaviors. One thing I will say is one question, like for example, if you want to see a leader like dig into this, ask people, who do you need to see more? Who do you need to notice more on your team? Who is under noticed? And have them talk to each other about this. And all of a sudden they'll say, oh my gosh, I have not checked in on Karen in 2 weeks because she's a high performer. She shows up and just does what she needs to do. And that realization, when people consciously think about this, when they meet about it, when they talk about it, that's where the magic happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I can just add one little thing, as you were speaking, I remembered all of a sudden I had this very vivid memory of someone at Starbucks who really exemplified this in an extraordinary way. He was for a brief time the CEO between Howard's many here and there activities. But Jim Donald, if you ever get a chance to talk to Jim Donald or meet with him, he had an extraordinary gift for exemplifying these micro moments every single engagement. And you could be like just passing him in the hallway briefly, and he would stop and grab your arm and say, I missed you last week. How, we were missing this thing that you did, or the last time I talked to you, you'd said this thing. And it was just like these little things that you're just like, huh, what? And it was like often shake you out of like your Robotron down the
Mm-hmm.
hallway and trying to like get to the next thing. And it was just like, it was like a a really big hug right in that moment, and you just carried it with you for the whole day. You're like, wow, the CEO stopped me and called me out and called me by my name, looked me in the eye and said he remembered something about me. And he just did it for every person he met. He could remember your name, he could remember everything. So he's an extraordinary person that I think really does this well. And thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that, because I'm now reflecting like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed working with him. I'm going to take some of those little things that he used to do and pull them forward.
Yeah, and then pull them out as skills and show people how they're learnable.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of times we hold these leaders up on these pedestals and we're like, oh my gosh, what an inspiring leader.
Yeah.
They are, yes, but we can do those things,
Mm.
and one of the things we need to start doing is glorifying these small moments. Great leadership is actually really boring.
Yeah.
It occurs in the 5 minutes of coming onto a Zoom meeting and instead of checking your emails, looking the person who joined in the eye and asking them how they're doing, really meaning it. I
Mhm.
mean, that's the difference between leading someone and managing someone. And I think that like nobody posts on LinkedIn, I remembered someone's full name today and how to pronounce it. But that's what literally, when we ask thousands of people, that's what leaves a leadership legacy. That's what makes great leaders.
Mhm. It's
So
true.
we need to start glorifying these very small things that actually cultivate that sense of mattering that's the prerequisite for everything else. And one more thing you said is like, how do you convince people to do
Mhm.
this, to invest in like quote unquote soft skills? One of the questions that I typically ask like leaders, if there's like a CEO, and I've worked with some pretty tough companies that people are pretty resistant to this at first, or they just don't, they think, hey, I got here, look at me. I'm a Fortune 500 executive. Like I obviously got my soft skills down. Um, I typically tell them, what is one financial metric that's not mediated through a human being? I'd like you to like write that down if you could at the board. And there's silence. And then I usually say, what's the ideal state of that human being? Give me some words. They'll say, well, they should be energized. Well, they should be committed. Well, they should be motivated. Um, and then I'd say, well, what's the ideal state of that? And they'll always go back to, well, they should feel like what they're doing does something. Oh yeah, like that they matter, right? And I said, so how much money are you spending on trying to get the lagging indicators of performance, productivity, and engagement? How much money are you spending measuring those things? Like, just give me a figure. Is anybody is HR person here? Like, give me a figure, and they'll tell me. Okay, give me the amount of money you're spending on making sure the leading indicator happens that the people feel that they matter, so they have the energy to do all the lagging indicators you say you want. There'll be a lot of silence. How are you scaling the skills to make sure everybody feels that they are valued and know how they add value from the front line all the way up to the C-suite so they can deliver, they're regenerating the energy to deliver on all of these lagging indicators you say you care about.
Mhm.
And usually that's a light bulb moment, not in like I gotcha moment, but in that I have a
Yeah.
lot of empathy for leaders because leaders, if my worth was contingent on a quarterly earnings report, I would be focusing on the wrong thing too. Right?
Mhm.
Because what happens is that we focus on the lagging indicators and we're so in that world that sometimes we got to step back and say, oh my gosh, what do people here have to actually feel to accomplish what we want them to accomplish? And it all comes back to what you all are doing in this group, which is well-being. But it's almost hard for anything to matter to someone who doesn't first believe that they matter. And that's why I believe mattering is the foundation of well-being because you wouldn't do much of anything today. You wouldn't have gotten out of bed. You wouldn't have come onto this call. You wouldn't have drank a glass of water if you didn't believe at some small level that your life was worthy of your important energy. Like mattering is the animating force of human behavior. NYU's Rebecca Newberger Goldstein, great philosopher, she calls it the mattering instinct. That's our most primal human instinct is actually when we're born to reach out to matter to someone else enough to keep us alive. And that is the actual instinct. It's a biological instinct that drives all of the motivation research we found on meaningfulness. Even psychological safety is really mattering in disguise, right? Because we can go out, experiment, take risks, learn, make mistakes because we know that we have a secure relationship with somebody who has our back and we matter to that we can come back to, just like a child with a parent, just like a newborn reaching out for a caregiver.
Yeah.
Zach,
Yeah.
I have a practical question for you.
Sure.
I'm sure that you're part of a lot of conversations in the workplace about this and the effects of hybrid work and remote work.
Hmm.
And I'm curious what's happening in those conversations in terms of like not having the before the meeting meetings, not having the liminal spaces, not having the opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to have those at bats of like bumping into somebody in the hallway or in the parking lot. So what are you suggesting or recommending to organizations to help that gap?
Yeah, so you can't care for somebody if you don't have the time and you don't pay attention in that time. So you can't care for anything. I can't care for this snake if I don't have the time and I'm just hurrying around. Hurry and care cannot coexist. It's impossible. And so, one of the things that we have to realize when we do hybrid remote models, and I'm going to give the flip side to this of why return to office isn't the solution either, because if we do use hybrid and remote models, we have to realize that we actually default to using technology for efficiency. So our interactions actually become shorter. There's a large body of research on this, that our interactions become shorter virtually than they do in person. It's pretty standard. Like a lot of the virtual meetings that are scheduled that are like the 20-minute meeting was an invention of COVID, right? And so like just do a 20-minute meeting, a 15-minute meeting, or we reduce meetings. There's research that shows that remote employees have less one-on-ones with their supervisors, so less time to connect. So I think that it's really important to recognize that we tend to default to using technology for efficiency and not connection. So I don't think technology is the problem, the way technology is used. In my opinion, if you are a remote workforce, you should not be using your time to do updates. I think I mentioned this. If you have rare camera time, under no circumstance should you in an organization have each person go around in their virtual box and stay muted on their video until it's their turn and exchange information. That could be an email. What you should be doing is asking a question like, what's everybody thinking but no one is saying? Can you put that into the chat and then let's talk about those things? What are the log jams that are getting in the way of us doing our best work? Put it in the chat. Send me a private chat. You don't have to put it on the whole chat. Send me a private chat. And then I want to talk about these things. I'm going to bring them up and we're going to see what we can do about them. And we're going to position them of what we can do about them, what we can't do about them, what's out of our control right now. And we're going to spend the next 40 minutes on figuring out what we can do with them, about them. That is how you build connection in the same amount of time. So it's really not like when we look at things like mattering and loneliness and things like that, it's really not about the quantity of interaction. It's really about the quality of interaction that matters. There's some research that shows that as people's meeting load increases, their loneliness increases. So you can spend a lot of time with people. It's like that phenomenon of being at a party with all your friends and not feeling seen. Nobody really knows you. They don't know any of the nuances that you're working on. They don't check in with your life. You can't do that when everybody's just giving updates. So I think how you spend the in-person, the on-camera time is very important. What you do after the camera time or the remote rare time is important as well, because you have to realize that your technology as a supervisor is going to make it easier for you to forget about the people. So for example, Karen, if you were frustrated in the meeting, because I can now, when I shut off Zoom, you don't exist anymore. Poof. It's kind of odd when you think about this world we live in. Like, poof, you're gone. I don't know, I could just like sail into my weekend and never think about how frustrated you are. But what I've been working with a big law firm who has a lot of attorneys working on individual cases. And what I've had their supervisors start doing is if you see something, if I see you frustrated, I will have them do a phone call after and say, you have to deal with it right then and there and say, hey, Karen, it's Zach. I saw you were a little bit frustrated. You didn't get to talk in the last round of that meeting. I just wanted to check, is that right? Were you frustrated? Not I saw you frustrated. Let me help you, but is that right? And then I open it up for you to talk to me in that moment, and then you feel seen. So using that in between time, those micro check-ins, using your face-to-face time or video time to connect on how we're doing with one another. The second thing I would add to that is just sending people back to the office is not going to improve your culture. You may have noticed one of my clients that you introduced recently did that, which has been fascinating. But one of my advice to them was that if people come back to the office and they still experience being unseen, undervalued, and unheard by their supervisor, it doesn't matter where or when they work. They're going to be just as disengaged, just as unproductive, just as much on their phones looking at stuff during meetings as they were on Zoom. I think Nick Bloom finds this really well about remote work. It's not about where or when you work, it's about what you experience while you're working. That contributes to productivity and engagement.
Yeah. One of the things too is one of the things I try to be conscious of, sometimes it's easy just to schedule that meeting and just go, okay, I've got you booked in here. Now I need to get this laundry list of things covered with you. But I always take like, I try. I'm not good at this, but I try to take that moment and just go, okay, how are you doing? Last time we talked, you had this thing you were excited about. How did it go? Or I'm trying very hard to do this, but it is hard, and it's like, oh gosh, the day is only so long. You got kids stuff and family stuff and
Yeah.
work stuff and yeah, but
That's why you need practices, right? Practices and habits.
yeah, yeah,
And you can't put too much pressure on yourself. Some of this stuff takes seconds to do.
yes.
I'm an intro. So if I was to take the MBTI, even though it's been relatively debunked, I'm an introvert and a thinker, right?
Yeah.
So imagine that. And I'm a P, so that means I don't plan anything. I like I'm going at the speed of light here. Um, if I like, I think I latched on to researching this because I need it the most. Like I was like, this is the I'm a, like a hard charger in my professional life. Like I need it the most. And one of the things, a couple of little things that I do, like with Emerald, who works with me, is on the top of my one-on-ones, I write, "Don't forget to ask about dot dot dot," right on the
Yeah.
top of my one-on-one agenda, and that helps me out a lot. We also spend. I could have Emerald here, and she'll know. We spend, and this will drive some people here crazy, maybe. We spend about 20 minutes just talking about life at the beginning of our one-on-ones.
Hmm.
Like just talking about what's going on. I mean, she has two young kids. Just talking about their baseball. One of them's experiencing like some bullying at school. But no, and I always think about her in another workplace. I think about her like knowing her kid who um, is on the autism spectrum, is getting bullied at school. I think about her in a team where her supervisor doesn't know that.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that is the reality of 6 out of 10 workers who doesn't have someone at work that cares for them as a person. And
Yeah.
if you're a supervisor, if you're an organization and you think that you're going to be more productive by excluding that lived experience from the workplace and dealing with it and supporting someone through it, then you probably shouldn't be a leader.
Mm.
Zach, I have a question.
Sure.
See how this could be easily applied in like the white collar workforce. I do a lot of work with construction companies, manufacturing, transportation companies.
Oh,
I think, MBTA. How does this kind of translate into some of those settings, and how would you think about it in that way?
so oh my gosh, we have to talk. So my dissertation was I embedded myself with a group of cleaners for a year and a half, and we were trying to understand how cleaners came to understand experience meaningful work. Um, and one of my clients is the contractor for Delta Airlines that does the cleaning, the airplane cleaning when they come on. So they have
Mhm.
crews that are coming in and out really fast. This actually fits in so well in these places because a lot of these places do not have the resources, B, the sheer time to devote to some of these things. So we've had to focus on everyday interactions and optimizing interactions, the passing in the hallways. There was this group I got to work with at Denver Airport. Delta Airlines asked me to go work with one of their highest performing cleanliness audit uh, units. So these are the people that when your plane parks, they go on and they clean the planes. And in the airline industry, turnaround time is everything. So I was down in their break room area, and immediately when they come in, there's a countdown clock. And their cleanliness audit scores are on an app, so they see their performance all the time. It's like super high pressure, low pay, and really just brutal hours, right? And so, but this unit had a really high performing unit of the whole airline. So I went down and I observed them. And the person that I met was named Tanya, and she's a real person. She's let me use her name. But the first thing that she did is she brought me to the ticket agent. I remember she like commented on how vibrant the ticket agent's smile was, and then went through this laundry list of like her career highlights, the ticket agent's highlights to me. We went through TSA. She found a TSA agent. and found him by name and was asking him about some vacation and his kids' names. And then we went down to the break room. And as we're going past a cleaner, I remember she said, "Hey, can you show me a picture of your daughter? I want to be reminded of why you're here." And he showed a picture of her daughter. This guy was there's a lot of people who are working on visas in the U.S. who are sending money back home. So his daughter was in Ghana, and this was like a huge population on this team. He was just beaming. And then I remember she asked him, she said, "What do you need from me today? What do you need from me? If there's anything you need to me, you text me." And then she went into the break room and started going around and saying what she appreciated about each person in front of me. And I remember she's like, "Okay, we got to go. Let's put on our vest and go." I tell you this story because she was not the supervisor. There was a contracting crew. She worked for Delta. She was not the crew's leader, but she chose to lead them in those interactions. And she said, "Zach, relationships are my job. Everything else, including quality, follows." So one of the things we started doing is we were like, "Oh my gosh, like if we can teach frontline supervisors the power of optimizing these interactions on a daily basis, this could be really powerful." And so we've since started doing that. And we have people like frontline supervisors, we'll have them map their interactions for a week, where and when they pass people in the hall, where and when they connect with people in short opportunities. And we ask them, "What do you talk about in these interactions?" And then what we have them do is we have them share how they can notice somebody, affirm somebody, or show them how they're needed in the interactions they have. And it's really profound. I mean, I would love to work with you about my experiences in construction and getting like project managers to adopt this. But when they see it as, "Oh, this isn't going to get in the way of time doing the work. This is actually, we can optimize the interactions we have while doing the work in these small ways that can literally be your competitive differentiator as a culture." It's really powerful. So I'm glad you asked that question.
May I second that because I work with blue collar workers a lot and I do healthy leadership training with them. And I
Oh,
have
great.
the
Yeah,
exact
tell us
same
more.
issues. So I would like to ask you two things that I get asked a lot because I would like to know your take on it. So what you need to know is it's a blue collar background. And the other thing is that we have an age mean of 50. So it's quite a different culture. People are different. So something that you often hear is that, so if I didn't criticize you, this should be appreciation enough. And so when I talk about healthy leadership and I see a lot of things that you addressed, I try to address in a similar way. So I try to teach them this kind of attitude and this kind of approach. And
Mm.
one thing I get asked a lot is that people say, you know, I can either be nice or I can get things done.
Oh,
So,
Heard that
what would you
before.
yeah,
answer?
I agree. I agree. Yeah, if you're just nice, you're not going to get anything
Yeah,
to done if
yeah,
done. If you're kind, you're going to get more done than you can imagine. There's a difference
yeah,
between just being
yeah,
nice and
yeah.
being truly kind to people in their
Mhm.
work. I would also say that some people say to me, "Zach, how do I hold people accountable and show them that they matter?" I say, you show people how they matter so that you can hold them accountable. There's research that
Yeah.
shows that 40% of performance improvement feedback decreases the receiver's performance. So I'm working at Harvard. And why is that? Well, the researchers find that it's because the person receiving the critical feedback doesn't feel understood or cared for by the giver of the feedback. So, do you think that what your critique is going to matter to me? What you say is going to matter to me if I don't feel that I first matter to you? So, one of the biggest problems with leadership and critique is we critique before we care.
Mhm.
So what I would ask those people is I would say, when's the last time you listened to someone's critical feedback and took their feedback? And ask these people this: if you've took their feedback and you knew that that person didn't care for you or did never demonstrated an interest in you. And even the most hardened people will be like, yeah. So what this is about is really about building the relational groundwork so that we can have
Mm.
these difficult conversations, as you know.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
But yeah, and I also like the thing about being nice. Like, this is not about being nice. Being nice is so easy. Anybody can be nice.
This is
Being,
what they think like healthy leadership means.
Yeah.
Be nice to everyone.
No, that's being nice. Being
Yeah,
kind takes
yeah,
skill.
yeah,
And in fact, some people say to me, when I ask, when do you most feel that you matter? Some people say to me, it's when they had a leader that really challenged them, like was giving them a lot of critique, giving them a lot of feedback, but they always say, but was there to support me,
yeah,
was constantly
Yeah.
checking in on how I'm doing, was constantly showing to me how I'm making incremental progress along the way. So the critique is great. When the critique and the care are there, when these both are there, that's where you get, I think, really great leadership. And so I say the same thing, like, yeah, no, I don't want you to be nice to people. You won't get anything done. That'll just be a waste of your time. But I do want you to, do you want to learn the skills to be kind to people so that you can have better accountability conversations? So I love that you're thinking like this.
yeah.
It's great. Chase, I think you had your hand up, and then Una.
Yeah, I'd love to sneak in a question. Thanks so much for your time, Zach. And Susan, I appreciated yours. I work with a lot of blue collar as well.
Yeah, I
I
think
feel
it's
like,
so important.
yeah, I feel like a lot of times when we talk about well-being at work, we talk about white collar professional environments and forget that a lot of people don't work in offices. Um,
80%. It's the 80%. There's a great
yeah,
OC Tanner study that's like 80%. They call it the 80%. 80% of the workplace is don't have offices. They're in
yeah,
service, frontline service work. So that should be the dominant frame of our discussions.
totally. So I kind of have a random question, kind of advice. So in 2020, I started a research project where I pulled data on how the intergenerational workforce talks about work on social media. So I pulled trends
Cool.
from TikTok, Twitter before Elon bought it, and just kind of see how people are talking about work. And I always give the caveat I'm a Gen X, so that's where my bias is. But the reason why I bring this up is, and I see this in surveys I do with workforces, doing employee listening, there is such a gap between executive leadership
Mm,
and this workforce on what their lives are like. So it's so much deeper than matter
mm,
caring.
mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
getting this understanding of they feel this way because of all these other things going on in like the economy and life. So this younger generation is sitting there, and I have this quote I use in a lot of my presentations from
Mm,
a survey, and it's a direct quote. And this employee is like, I'm in my 30s. I'm never going to be able to retire. I'm never going to be able to buy a house. Climate
yeah,
change is real. Like they're spiraling, and it's sometimes I do. So we have these leaders, and sometimes we can get them to care, but it's still almost like the surface level caring
yeah,
and mattering. It's not really that understanding of what their lives are like. It's this tunnel vision
yeah.
of, I was able to get here, so you should be. I feel like we're in this really empathy crisis since COVID. So I don't know if you have any advice on how to
Mm,
influence or persuade to get senior leaders to really open up even more, to really take that step back and be like, I'll do it with like wage work and stuff like that. When we're looking at wages, like
yeah.
you're not even paying a living wage, let alone a thriving wage. So I don't know. It's kind of like a conceptual question, but I figured I'd just throw it out and see what you've caught and could throw back at it.
Yeah, so first of all, I like to focus on unifying needs when it comes to generations.
Mhm.
Because when I'm in an intergenerational room, I start the conversation by saying, raise your hand really high if you'd prefer to feel insignificant at work. And I've never seen like even a hardened CEO say that they'd prefer that. And then I have them talk. One of the best things is to have intergenerational conversations where people talk about, okay, what does feeling significant mean to you in work? And then they start speaking the same language. They're speaking from the same need. And I think that that's a really powerful way to bridge generations. But I also think that you're right. But what you are talking about is a societal mattering issue, um, with the younger generation. So do you remember the lying flat movement in China? So there was this post of this guy who posted himself laying on his bed, and he's like, organization, society, the economy doesn't care about me, so I'm not going to care. I'm just going to do nothing all day. And it started this lying flat movement. That's when the quiet quitting movement started in the US. And so one of the things I think that, like, senior executive has gotten wrong about those movements is they think they're indicative of a lazy, entitled generation versus being able to name it as the inevitable withdrawal response of feeling insignificant and unseen and unheard and unvalued by the systems that they're in, that actually the executive themselves are complicit in creating the system that manifests in the withdrawal behaviors of quiet quitting. And once you I think help people see that link and then help people to understand the many possible drivers of that link, it's a very powerful conversation. But I would like to go more towards that unifying need and have people talk about that. Like, what does it mean to feel significant? And we can all agree that that's important. I mean, I've seen even the most get your work done and leave type of leaders uh, have all told me that they wanted to feel significant and seen and heard in work. Nobody's ever been like, oh my gosh, these Gen Zers, they just want to feel seen, heard, valued. What's wrong with them? I mean, I don't think anybody can actually even say that with a straight face. But so once you get down and break it down into basic needs, it's really helpful. But I think that we should all do an event together because this is great. We need to do a panel. This is this is the type of discussion actually I'm not seeing as much out there. Honestly, when it comes to well-being, these sort of nuanced discussions and the what happened, what do we do when, how do we mitigate this barrier? So I really appreciate these questions.
Thank you, Zach. Could you, before we wrap up, maybe just close us out with just some comments on how this all relates to flourishing and purpose?
Yeah, I mean, well, purpose is knowing I take Corey Key's definition of authentic purpose, which is what you're doing has a direction and has a usefulness to others.
Yeah.
We can't forget that the usefulness and transcendence aspect of purpose is what makes purpose predictive of flourishing. It's not just having a goal in life. So, one of the things I would say is that it's very hard for someone to contribute if they don't first believe they're worthy of contributing. We talk about strengths and flourishing. It's very hard for people to believe that they have them. It's very hard for someone to share their voice if they don't first believe their voice is significant. People aren't going to walk through your open door if they don't feel that they're worthy enough to walk through the open door. So when it comes to flourishing, and I think flourishing is a lagging indicator, I don't think you can pursue flourishing. I think you pursue all of the leading indicators of flourishing. And it is very difficult to have energy in this life if you don't believe at some level that you matter. Now, what's very difficult, especially in psychology, to realize is that mattering is sort of like a neglected concept in psychology. And one of the reasons why is that the research time and time again finds that it's most dependent on other people. The research is pretty clear. We can't sit in our offices and just believe that we are enough and then expect to go into environments that show us the evidence of our significance and expect us not to come to believe that we're insignificant in the long run. A well individual in an unwell system will become an unwell individual eventually. So when it comes to flourishing, I would like to see more of a systemic approach to flourishing where we are making it easier for people to see how they matter so they can do everything else. And that happens in small, micro, daily interactions. That's also great. It's great news, right? I mean, we can do something about it in our next interaction.
That's manageable.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes from your book, Zach, is that humans are best when they're relied on by others.
Yeah, there's a great quote that opens that chapter that says, the essence of the human experience is to be relied on by just one other person. Think about how we would just deconstruct if no one needed us.
Thank you for all the comments in the chat too.
Oh, yeah.
And the blend of, yes, this is an individual issue, but it's also there are systemic factors. We can't plant a flower in a parking lot. It won't bloom. We could go on and on with questions, but I'm aware
I know.
of time. Any parting comments or questions that you, Zach, or anybody else here is dying to share?
No, thanks. This was really fun. I
I
mean,
just
this
wanted
was
to
like, this
appreciate.
is great.
uh,
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to thank you for really reminding us this micro moment of marrying and renaming it. And I think when we really express, I think there's a positive resonance between two individual, and that can help us to individually, collectively making meaning and making sense.
Mm,
Thank
hmm.
you for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to email you later with other questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
That's
from
great.
an
And
email in the chat. Thank you for that, Zach.
yep.
Appreciate
Thank you
you
all.
all
Yeah.
being
And I
here.
guess that's the boomerang effect of mattering I write about in the last chapter that of the book, that the more we actually do this for others, the more positive emotions we feel, the more open we are to relationships, and the more we feel that we matter. And that's where that upward spiral happens.
The virtuous cycle, the
The
positive.
virtuous cycle. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much, Zach. Go buy
Thank you all.
Zach's book. Have a great
Thanks.
day.
Bye.